In the first episode of FX's Shogun, we're introduced to Lord Yoshi Toranaga. He's one of the show's main characters, but the way he's shown to us is very unlike a normal character introduction. His first major scene takes place during a political talk between him and the 4 other regions of Japan. Immediately, the positioning and attitudes of every character in the room shows us that it's Toranaga against the other 4. This is a tense political standoff of some kind. As the regions talk, we piece together what's going on, that these 5 men rule Japan until the previous ruler's heir comes of age. The other regions accuse Toranaga of essentially kidnapping the heir's mother to hold as a bargaining chip and demand her return, but Toranaga insists that she came of her own free will, and that he is taking good care of her. What's so unusual about this scene? Well, first off, the fact that Toranaga is a big fat liar. While you're watching this, you don't buy for a second that Toranaga is just keeping the heir's mother safe. The regions pretty much openly accuse him of plotting to take over Japan, and Toranaga just goes, "What? I would never." The subtext of the scene is that the other regions are fully accurate in their assessment of Toranaga's actions, that he's making moves to overthrow them. And yet we still root for Toranaga, even though we have no idea why he's doing these things. That's the real weirdness of this scene. We're being introduced to a protagonist of the story, but we're not given a single insight into what's going on inside his head. We don't know any more than the other characters about Toranaga's motives. Writing 101 says that any scene should be built around the question of what does a character want and why can't they have it. We have that in this scene, but it's through the bad guys. The other regions want Toranaga to give up the heir's mother, or at least admit he's plotting against them, but he won't. We can tell from framing and vibes that Toranaga is the good guy and that the other guys suck. But the other guys are the point of view characters here. Toranaga is a big old question mark. The scene gets us to root for Toranaga, but it never lets us identify with him. When I watched the opening of this show, I noticed how the scene felt a little off, but I didn't think that much of it. I just kept on watching, waiting for the moment where we got inside Toranaga's head. But that moment never came. You watch all the way through to the finale, and Toranaga's thoughts, motives, and plans are always a mystery. And whenever something goes right or wrong for him, you're never really sure if he planned it. So after finishing the show, I want to ask, why? Why would a story present a main character and then make him feel like a total stranger? So I've always been drawn to stories where the point of view character is not the most important character in the story. To define some terms real quick, the protagonist of a story is the focal character, the one who we spend the most time with, and the one whose decisions advance the plot. The point of view character is the person who we, the audience, are made to identify with. We see the story world through their eyes and get detailed glimpses into their inner thoughts. Usually, these are the same character, but sometimes a story separates them. The most obvious example I can think of is Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock is the most important character, but the story is narrated by Dr. Watson, and we see the detective story unfold through his eyes. The reason most stories don't do this is because typically, you want the audience to be inside the head of the most interesting character, because that's the most fun. But there are benefits to telling the story of a cool character from an outside perspective. It tends to work best when your protagonist is really spectacular, but you see them through the point of view of a regular guy. It makes the protagonist seem that much more impressive. With Sherlock Holmes, telling the story from Watson's point of view limits how much we the audience know about the case and what Sherlock has figured out, which allows Sherlock to dramatically reveal information at the right moment. In Shogun, the point of view is John Blackthorne, an English sailor who finds himself stranded in Japan, although I would describe John and Toranaga as dual protagonists. Having John as the point of view character makes a lot of practical sense, since he's the fish out of water trying to figure out the world of feudal Japan, along with a largely American audience. John has a hard time navigating Japanese culture and politics, because the Japanese people have vastly different social structures. The biggest culture shock to him and to us is that no one in Japan ever seems to say what they really mean. There are so many layers of political doublespeak and false politeness that you can never be totally sure of anyone's intentions. But this is more than just a dumb foreigner not getting the local culture. Deceit and the act of covering up your true intentions are core themes of the show. One of the early episodes recites a Japanese proverb about how all people have 3 hearts.
One in his mouth for the world to know, another in his chest, just for his friends, and a secret heart, buried deep where no one can find it.
This show is very much about the fact that no one ever reveals their true selves. No one exemplifies this better than Toranaga. Even his reasons for going to war in the first place are vague. Is he doing this because he was close with the previous ruler before he died, and he sees his own ascension to Shogun as necessary to save Japan? Or is it because the other regions turned against him unprompted and the only option was for him to fight? Does he even want power at all? We don't know anything for sure. And he never tells anyone what he's planning, basically ever. Toranaga is clearly a master tactician. We never know just how much he planned everything out, and it's so cool to see what looks like him backed into a corner, only to go, what? He planned for all that to happen? He's a total enigma for most of the show. Just about the only times we see him being even a little bit open is when he talks to his son, Nagakado. He tries to teach Nagakado about how to be a good leader and tactician. So during these conversations, we get honest looks at how he thinks. He repeatedly emphasizes the idea that humans can be easily manipulated and controlled, as long as you know what they want and where you want to direct them, which is something Toranaga does constantly across the series. The best example is probably Yabushige, who is pretty much openly working for the enemy for the first half of the show, only for Toranaga to basically trap him into being loyal. Every time Yabushige does something treacherous, Toranaga's like, ah yes, exactly what I wanted you to do, my loyal servant, until the other regions think Yabushige switched sides. Toranaga does this with everybody. He keeps John as a retainer, even though John doesn't want to be there, because he'll need him to secure the English as a foreign ally after the war is over. He traps Butaro into not killing John by leveraging marriage laws so he can't without killing Mariko too. He even gets into a fake disagreement with his closest friend, leading him to commit seppuku to make the enemies think he looks weak. He's so consistently good at this that when Nagakado disobeys his orders and gets himself killed fighting Nobutatsu, you have that nagging thought like, did he plan that too? Did he trick his son into getting himself killed so that he could use his mourning period to his advantage? By the way, no, from everything we can see, he did not plan that. The advantage he got wouldn't have been worth it, and his son is consistently the one character he can't control. The thing about Toranaga as a character is that he's perfect. He doesn't make mistakes, and he always makes the right decision. I'm not saying everything he does always works perfectly. Things do go wrong for him, but the things that go wrong are always things he couldn't possibly have predicted, like the earthquake. He always makes the most optimal decision with the information he has every single time. But how can that be? How can you have a protagonist who never makes a mistake? Well, that brings us to the reason I wanted to make this video to begin with. You can have a perfect hero, as long as you never see what they're thinking. There's this overarching principle of storytelling that explains a lot about how the show is written. Let's call it the law of unknowns. Basically, events in a story need to be, to some degree, unexpected. You can't know exactly what's going to happen next, because that would be boring. This is why, for example, if the audience learns about a character's plan ahead of time, the plan won't work. But if the plan is a secret, then it will work. Ever notice that? If the characters go, okay, here's what we're gonna do, and then it cuts away, you know they're gonna win. It's because the story can't show you what the plan is and then show it succeeding. Then you're just seeing the same thing twice. So plans have to be kept secret from the audience for them to work. That's the law of unknowns. It's also why the only effective fictional leaders are the ones whom we never actually see make any decisions. Being a leader in a fictional story is always a raw deal. They never have an easy time. A leader's entire job is to make plans. And like we just established, plans don't work when the audience knows about them. So that basically means that if the protagonist is a leader, then nothing they ever do can be fully successful. You never have a protagonist who leads people with perfect effectiveness. The leader always has some sort of major flaw. They could be lacking expertise and be in way over their head. They could be overly impulsive and bad at decision making. Or they could be really uncharismatic and unable to get their followers to listen to them. And even if the protagonist is genuinely a good leader, they'll be full of self-doubt and maybe not even want to lead in the first place. So when or if fictional leaders win, It's by desperate improvisation, luck, and last-minute victory. But that's what's so brilliant and different about Shogun. It can have a perfect leader in Toranaga because he's not the point of view character. Toranaga is based on a real historical figure who did unite Japan. I'm writing this video before the final episode airs, but I think it's a safe bet to say that he's going to win in the end. The writers could have dug deep into Toranaga's psyche and show all his doubts and flaws, but that wouldn't feel true to this larger-than-life historical titan they were trying to portray. So they locked us out of his mind. We have to watch him from afar and wonder what he's planning during every step of the way, because that's the only way to make him feel truly like the master strategist that he is. And it's the only way that a fictional leader can have undeniable, complete, and total victory.
必ず目論見柄と信じておられるのは何故にござりまするか。
他に道があるか。幸福か。幸福の術など父上は知る由もないわ。